Business insurance is one of the most difficult areas for advisors in the financial planning industry. A lot of advisors actually go to many business insurance presentations and hear all the technical theory, but there seems to be a skill gap in applying that theory in a real life scenario. So what we wanted to do today is replicate how to position business insurance at the start of the meeting, during the meetings, so that you can understand better how to position business insurance, which will hopefully help you be a better business and better practice for the future. Hi Alan, my name's Tony Bevan, the business consultant. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So my role as a business consultant, I actually work very closely with yourselves as business owners and your accountants in order to actually help you protect and preserve your business now, but also grow your business now and in the future, and help with any succession planning needs that you may have. Before we start, what I'd like to do is firstly just understand a little bit about yourself and the business that you've got.
About 800,000 a year, and our profit is around about 300,000 a year, roughly.
Right, okay. And you mentioned obviously you're one or two directors pieced together. What shareholding do you have in place? Is it 50-50?
Yes, it is, yeah, both have half.
Right, okay. And the net profits that you've, obviously 800,000 net profits, has that been growing steadily or what?
Yeah, look, 800's the revenue. Net profit's about 300-400 a year, just depends on what our expenses are for the year, depending on the jobs we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's grown. We started from scratch, so it's grown for nothing.
Wow, that's brilliant. And you mentioned your staff. How many staff do you have? And
yeah, there's Pete and I and two other staff that work with us.
Right. And you say the two other staff that work with you, may I ask what their positions are in the business?
Look, mainly administrative type roles, yeah.
Okay. And yourself and Pete, obviously your directors, shareholders, 50%. What roles do you actually individually do in the business?
Yeah, look, we both sort of manage the business a little bit. Pete does a lot more of going out and getting new customers for us. I'm the one that kind of looks after existing customers and make sure that they get what they need.
Wow, okay. So they're pretty important roles.
Yeah.
Wow. And my apologies, I don't know the structure that you've got the business under. Are there any provisions like a shareholder agreement that talks about retirement, succession planning, and even the worst demise or if death, etc.?
No, not really. No, we've just got a very standard shareholders agreement in place, but I don't think we've really ever talked about that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And is Pete related to yourself, or is there a separate connection?
No, totally separate.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, just a question, if I may, Alan. Obviously, there's no formal agreement in place regarding succession planning, etc. What would happen in the event of death of one of the directors? May I ask what provisions are in place for that?
Yeah, look, we've I guess talked about that in years gone by, but generally we would probably buy the other person's shareholding out, or just pay their estate wife an income from the business, depending on what we choose to do.
Right. Are you aware of the laws of intestacy and what happens on respect businesses being sold in the event of death of one of the directors? Not really. Would you mind if I just tell you exactly? And you really do need to speak with your solicitor and accountant about this as well. One of the things that happens if, like, for example, Pete, and I'll touch wood he doesn't, but if Pete was to pass away, unfortunately, tomorrow, his share of the business would actually fall into his estate. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, Alan, that the estate doesn't have to sell the business to yourself as an owner. Mm-hmm. Were you aware of that?
Not really. No, I haven't really thought about it.
Well, there are a number of options when something like this happens, whether it's a heart attack or whether it's actually somebody passing away, which is the worst case scenario. If that did happen, then the share of the estate would actually, the share of the business, would actually fall into the estate. Now, the estate have got a number of options available to it. They can actually sell to yourself, obviously if you agree a price, etc., but they don't have to. What they could do is actually bring in or bequeath his share of the business to a relative. So you could have anybody from his wife that could come in, and even a cousin or a relative or an 18-year-old that could be sat at the desk right next to you on Monday morning. How would that impact the business, Alan?
Well, it would probably change things a fair bit over time, because we each have our roles that we do, so we need somebody in that could actually do that job.
Wow. And I said that was one of the options, that they don't have to sell to you, they could actually bring a family member in. And it sounds, from what you're telling me, Alan, is that they'd have to be have the same level of skills that Pete does in order to replace him. Is that right?
Yeah,
There is another scenario which I've seen a couple of times as a business consultant. As I said, the estate doesn't have to sell to you. What they can do is they can sell to the highest bidder. And on 1 or 2 occasions I've seen them sell to a competitor. So on Monday morning instead, you could actually have your competitor sat at the table, basically dictating the way that you're running and growing the business. Were you aware of that?
No, again, something we haven't really talked about or thought about.
Does that concern you?
Absolutely, yeah.
There is a number of things that you can do about it, and this is why I work with the accountants and obviously your solicitors. There are a couple of options that you can do. That's if the estate wishes to sell to you. Number one is you can actually use some of your existing cash flow and money that you've got in reserves to obviously pay the estate out. That's if they want to sell to you, but obviously that would impact your profits and cash flow for a period of time. So there's one option. The second option is that you could actually go to the banks and raise the money in order to pay the estate out. And again, that's if they want to sell to you. And finally, there's a third option, which is basically what we call a buy and sell arrangement, which means that you each take out insurance on your own lives, and then working with your accountant and solicitor, we put into place what we call a buy and sell arrangement, which makes sure that Pete's share of the business goes to the right people at the right times for the right amount or right consideration. So there are a couple of options that are available to you. Is that something that you'd be interested, or have you thought about the different options?
Yeah, look, again, haven't really thought about it. So you're saying that Pete and I could have an arrangement where we could really decide on what happens in the event one of us dies, and then it's not up to the estate anymore to dictate what could happen.
Absolutely.
Great.
And it's called a buy and sell arrangement. We work with your accountant and your solicitor in order to set this up, but it just means it gives you surety and comfort to know that if one of you were to pass away, then you've got that surety and comfort of knowing that the business or that part of the shareholding would pass to the remaining or surviving director. And it's in an arrangement that absolutely makes sure that passes over. As I said, it passes over to you at the right time and it goes to the right people, which is quite comforting. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's something now that we've grown that probably is a bit more important than it was 4 or 5 years ago when we were starting up.
Well, in that case, what I'll do is, with your permission, I'll take your instructions and prepare something that will give you an overview of how to actually set this up. And obviously then we'll look at some of the finer detail, like the figures, etc., which I'll get one of my specialist team to get the information from you if we
Sure.
could.
Yeah, sounds great.
No problem. Now, a little bit earlier you mentioned obviously that you and Pete were quite crucial to the business in some of your roles. You mentioned about yourself, and obviously you look after the existing customers and Pete does all the sales. What would happen to the revenue of the business if one of you weren't around?
Yeah, look, I guess it depends how long they're not around for. Like at the moment, we both take holidays. That's not a massive problem.
Yeah.
We cover each other on that. But look, long term, I mean, for our business, we have a lot of existing clients, but also we're growing. We can get some newer clients in as well. So you'd notice it if one of us wasn't around for a longer period of time.
Yeah. And worst case scenario, if, as we talked about earlier on the situation of death, how would you actually replace Pete or the loss of revenue that he's got in his business at the moment if he wasn't around?
Yeah, you'd have to go and find somebody that's got the similar skill set
Yeah.
to him.
I mean, how long would that take to train somebody up in that
I
scenario?
don't know. I mean, some of what we do is quite unique, so it might take a little while, certainly a while to find the right person.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, would that impact profits?
Probably in the short term, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did you know that this is one of the arrangements? I say one of the things that we look for and what we work with, obviously, your accountant on is making sure that if one of you was to pass away or have an illness, etc., that loss of those profits are actually covered in the short term while you're looking to replace them and actually obviously build the skills up to the level where Pete or yourself are at this moment in time. I didn't know if you realised that is available to yourself.
No, I didn't know.
Right, but we actually call this key person. And as it sounds from what you and yourself and Pete, obviously you're talking about yourself and Pete, is key person is absolutely one of those things that makes sure that as a company grows, it obviously increases its profits, but there are people that are absolutely key to the business. And what we try to do is make sure, working with your accountant, that we ensure there is a sum of money that is actually there and made available for you to actually bring another person into the business, train them up, and make sure that it minimises the loss of profits or revenue to the company.
Okay.
Is that something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, look, I think it's worth looking at, yeah, for both of us.
And like I say, we work with the accountant very closely because there are occasions where on things like key person, if it's of a revenue nature, it may be potentially tax deductible to the business, which is even better. But we would work closely with the accountant to actually work out the exact amounts and potentially, you know, what impact it would have to the business in the event of one of the key people passing away or having a serious illness.
Okay.
What I'd like to do from here is actually take your instructions and do some more investigation into the areas that we discussed today and actually come back with what we call a statement of advice that firstly will start to look at how we protect each one of you as directors and making sure that if there was an unfortunate event, a sum of money would go to the right people at the right time, but ensure that the part of the shareholding of the deceased estate would actually fall into the right hands.
Right.
And then secondly, what we can do is also look and work out ways working with your accountant to make sure that there isn't a loss of revenue or profits in the event of one of the key people passing away or having a serious illness. Is that okay for us to actually move forward on that basis?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, I'll arrange another meeting, but in the meantime, I'll get some forms signed with yourself, and then we'll start some more inquiries with yourself.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.